He is the president and founder, I might add, of the Brotherhood Organization of a New Destiny. This is Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. Rev, what's shaking?
Dennis, I have to say it's an honor to be on with you. Thank you so much for having me on. I always enjoy you on O'Reilly when I'm able to catch it. You're a funny guy.
Thank you, Rev. I appreciate it.
I get your jokes, too.
Thank you, baby. That's that's nice of you, because I don't get half of them. I'm just up there smoking mirrors, just smoking mirrors.
They're pretty funny.
Thank you, man. Tell me about your organization first, the Brotherhood Organization of a New Destiny, before we get into specifics about the Prez.
We've been around for 24 years now. This month is our 24th anniversary. Our purpose is to rebuild the family by rebuilding the man. And what we're doing is we're helping young men of all races, but the focus is really on the black male. We're helping them to overcome their anger. We show them how to forgive their parents for not being there for them in the right way, because that's where their anger starts. Mm-hmm. And once they forgive, they feel 100% better about themselves, and they can see that they can move on and do whatever they want to do in life. We had a home for 23 years for young men that we bring in from around the country, and we show them how to overcome the anger. We help find jobs and start businesses. If they haven't finished school, we get tutors and things like that to help them finish school. We counsel with them. We shut the home down last year because we started a private school, Bond Academy, for boys and girls, grades 1 through 12. And we are educating these boys and girls. They have to do the prayer and pledge allegiance to the flag every morning before class. We're teaching them the Constitution, and we're also teaching a trade. So when they do graduate from high school, if they don't want to go to college, at least they have a trade. I was taught that as long as you can work with your hands, you got to have food on your table. And I'm proud to tell you, Dennis, that we've done this the last 24 years without one dime from the government. We do not ask for money from the government, because I want to show black Americans that this is the greatest country in the world. And if you work hard, you treat people the way you would like to be treated, save your money, invest, that there's nothing on earth that can stop you. Success has nothing to do, or the lack thereof, have nothing to do with color, but everything to do with character and what you believe and do for yourself.
Well, God bless you, Reverend. God, I can't tell you how cathartic that sounds to me in a world where I often look at old touchstones, hard work, stuff like that, and think, what's happening to the country? It's called the Bond Academy because it got a little garbled there, B-O-N-D. Is there a website, or just yours, Jesse, on Twitter?
There is a website. It's where the original Bond website is bondinfo.org, BONDINFO.org, and on there you can see the school and all the good stuff. For those that don't use computers, like I'm learning to do it now. I'm 64 years old, so I'm getting in the groove right now. They can call 1-800-411-2663, 1-800-411-BOND, B-O-N-D. You know, long story short, I grew up on a plantation down in Alabama, outside of Montgomery, Alabama. And my parents and their parents and their parents worked the plantation. I was taken out of school. The boys were taken out certain times a year to plant the crops and then to harvest the crops. But because I was taught, and I did finish high school barely. I often wonder why they graduated me, but they did. But I was taught to work from day one. And because I was taught to work when I left home at the age of 18, I've not had to rely on anyone else. I was taught how to save my money, how to invest it, and things like that. And, if I can do it coming from that plantation, not with the best education, there's nothing to stop these young black kids now, except that they're getting a bad start at home. The public schools are setting them up to fail. And if they can get past that, and they can make it in this country.
I read an article. We're talking to the Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson, and the website, once again, I feel it's so important, is it's a .org. It's bondinfo.org?
Yes.
Bondinfo.org. candid.org. I read an article recently about how he's falling into memories, miasma, Booker T. Washington. But a lot of this, when they delineated what he stood for and all that, it seemed like much of this. Did the man have an impact on you over the course of your life?
That's a perfect question. He had a major impact on my life. When I was going through high school, my agriculture teacher would take us to Tuskegee University every year, every summer, and we learned about Booker T. Washington and what his purpose was, and how he not only taught academics, but he taught them how to farm and how to do things to take care of themselves. And most of my ideal about the school and all that came from Booker T. Washington. I've read his books. I know that I know about him, and he had a major impact on my life and a lot of folks who lived in Alabama.
Yeah, it's a bit heartbreaking, but they're sort of cutting him loose in a way historically and leaning more towards W.E.B. Du Bois, who I listen. At that time in history, behavior to man was abhorrent. So whatever way a young man wants to go to express his thing, but or his disenchantment. I'm not going to castigate anybody. I haven't walked in that man's shoes. But I do know when I read, if you gave me a blind taste test and I read Booker T. Washington's thing, I'd say, for God's sakes, whoever wrote that is brilliant, because that simple wisdom is the essence of life.
It sure is. One thing, too, we are teaching the children, and I live by this principle myself. I have no grudges against anyone. I don't resent anyone. I don't agree with, a lot of things, but I don't hold it against the people. And Booker T. Washington taught, and he, as you know, was born in slavery. He was taught not to hate, not to resent anybody or anything, because they're good in some people, they're bad in some people, never mind the color. And we're teaching the boys and girls that we're working with, they must not harbor resentment against anyone. The reason that Booker T. Washington is being taken out of the picture is because the so-called civil rights leaders, Jackson, Sharpton, the NAACP, most of the black preachers, not all, but most who are not called by God but by their mama, they don't want black Americans to know to have good examples. They don't want them to know about Booker T. Washington, because he was able to succeed in, just rough times, but he did quite well. If Booker T. were really known by other black people, then the civil rights leaders so-called civil rights leaders cannot control them. You have to brainwash, dumb down, and demoralize a person or people in order to control them. And so they are constantly working to keep black Americans angry in order to deceive them, because when you're angry, the friend looks like the enemy and the enemy looks like the friend. And so if black Americans were to wake up, take control of their own lives, start thinking for themselves, then Jackson and Sharpton and the whole civil rights establishment would go out of business. They know it, and that's why they constantly create lies, especially about the race issue, so that they can keep these folks on the government, dependent on government, because that money goes into their pockets and their whatever cause they may have. They do not want black Americans to wake up. And unfortunately, so many blacks are angry, they can't see that they have been lied to by the people that they trust the most. And I know this because when I moved to California at 18, I fell into that same trap. And it wasn't until I started to question things that God allowed me to see clear, and I came out of that situation because I realized I was being used by the people I trusted the most.
We're talking to Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. He has a great article in Human Events, 5 Things Black People Can Do to Succeed Despite Obama. I didn't have time to get to that, but it's at Human Events. You can follow Jesse on Twitter at JPTalk. Reverend Peterson, I hold resentments too dear sometimes. And when you say your prayers today, I wish you'd pray for me, because I think I was meant to bump into you today to remind myself that sometimes you've got to let that poison go. Say a prayer for me, brother, and I'll try my best. It was nice to meet you. Reverend Peterson.
This is the Dennis Miller Show.